Hello, class. This week we are turning the page to really a different type of writing, if you will, in terms of the voices comprising the modern American and contemporary American short story. We're turning to four what I call white bread middle American writers. We're looking at John Cheever, John Updike, Margaret Atwood, and Joyce Carol Oates. All of them have achieved considerable fame in both the short story genre and others, but particularly in the short story. John Cheever is really regarded as a modern master of the short story. John Updike is a very famous novelist, won the Pulitzer Prize for one of his novels. Margaret Atwood also is a very famous novelist. Joyce Carol Oates is primarily a short story writer and an essayist. I want you to look at how these voices, these four collective voices, if you will, differ substantially from the Harlem Renaissance voices that you have previously read. I think you will see there's some striking differences. Also, see what similarities you may find between these writers in terms of how they describe their America. So look at the America that they describe versus the America that the writers that you studied in the Harlem Renaissance describe, and see what differences and similarities you come up with. These stories also, and this is what the discussion prompt is based on, these stories also this week focus on relationships. You have a number of relationships that are examined, if you will, by these various writers. For example, in Cheever's tale, it's the father-son relationship. In that very short story, it's only about 2.5 pages, all taking place in a very confined setting, but it really exposes the dynamics of the relationship between this father and his son. Then let's move to Margaret Atwood's story. Margaret Atwood's story is, you're going to have to read it several times. It's very short, but it's divided into sections. I want you to understand that each section talks about a different view of that relationship. It's a relationship between a husband and a wife. Like I say, you're going to have to read that several times to catch on to it. In terms of the different descriptions that are provided, and also the way Atwood looks at it from a different vantage point, if you will. So read that one carefully. Happy endings. Decide if it truly is a happy ending or not for this couple, for this husband and wife. Then we have the story by Joyce Carol Oates. That's really a story of a relationship between a mother and a daughter, and then the daughter's relationship with a stranger that she meets. This story was written by Joyce Carol Oates in the mid-1960s. 1966, I believe, is when it was published. It was part of the impetus for her writing this story was a series of murders that happened in California. She also mentioned Bob Dylan. She dedicated this story to Bob Dylan. The song that is mentioned at the end, the song lyrics at the end of the story about blue eyes, are from a Dylan song. So, that's simply to give you some additional context about this story. And then finally, the story by John Updike at the A&P is another very famous short story. It's quite short, and it deals with the relationships between strangers, between these girls who walk into the store, and then the narrator, and then, of course, the store manager who comes in. So this is really a week about relationships and how writers define those relationships and analyze those relationships, whether it be father-son, whether it be husband and wife, whether it be mother-daughter or mother-daughter plus strangers, and whether it be between strangers themselves. So I would invite you to look at these stories along those lines, and that's what the discussion prompt this week will ask you to do. So I look forward to seeing you on the discussion boards.